Well, thank you very much. It is, in fact, a great pleasure for me to be back in Madison. I want to say, first of all, that when I sit there and listen to all that, I'm reminded of the fact that my mother, when she was still alive, used to say, you know, I'm not sure what the boy does, but I think he's a migrant worker. That, in fact, has been the case in my adult life. This is what I have done. It was now over 2 years ago that I first came here to Madison to speak with a group of business leaders who wanted to talk about the future here, who wanted to listen perhaps to some possibilities of what turned into a great process that we are here to talk about and celebrate today. We knew that when we wrapped up the implementation plan for Advance Now in April of 2012, that there was a long road ahead for you. The rebuilding of a board, the rebuilding of a staff, the selling of Advance Now to initial investors, talking across the region, building trust and cooperation across all the counties and their diverse individual communities. There was a lot of churn going on. You had major leadership changes taking place in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, an upcoming high-profile election, and a serious transformation at the state level. Now some of that has passed. Do things feel calmer now? Is the region more stable? I think not. The fact is that this is now a new reality. Uncertainty, change, internal and external pressures. The Great Recession has changed everything. It will never be like it was. The fact is that you aren't an isolated Midwestern economy anymore. You can't expect the state and the university jobs to keep your economy humming along. The Madison region is operating in a new national and global reality. If you haven't figured it out, there is no downhill from here moment in this work. You never get to sit back and enjoy the ride. I recall some years ago we were doing a strategy for a community south of Atlanta. And midway through it, as we were having a steering committee meeting, this lady raised her hand and said, Mr. Holladay, who's going to do all this work? And then the same woman about 10 minutes later said, Mac, when is this going to be over? And I said, ma'am, how long are you planning to live? Building a great place is a life's work. If you are doing well, there's someone right behind you in this global market doing better. There's also a place within the region that may not be quite the same as another. It is difficult. The work is never over. An outcome of Advance Now must be that the holistic regional economic development work you're doing is so effective that you never stop. You only build on what you've done. This strategy was distilled from hundreds and hundreds of ideas, as Bill indicated, challenges, opportunities, feedback we got from regional stakeholders that combined it with the serious research that we did, our own expertise, and that the steering committee decided on 5 core areas to think about for the region's future. Economic competitiveness, human capital, innovation and entrepreneurship, the regional story, and cooperation, leadership, and diversity across all these 8 counties and communities. The targets were different. The legacy targets certainly included your history and power in advanced manufacturing and agriculture and food systems. But the leading targets were about healthcare and life sciences, and the emerging target was about IT and design and technology, which now more and more every day affects all of our lives in every way. A year later, these goal areas are in fact more critical than ever before. and they are the right ones. The retention and expansion of your existing businesses, positioning the Madison brand nationally and internationally, the region's export and direct investment potential, the constant cultivation of an innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem, and a smart and adaptable talent pool are all top priorities. So is a diverse community that works across the region together to advance its leaders and welcomes change. There are two keys to the economic community of any region. The first is talent. And let me tell you, they don't look just like me. The fact is, it is about that diversity and acceptance of folks that is so vital to any place. And the second component is the quality of place. One of my children is named Sarah. When we have a conversation about quality of life, it is difficult to determine that we are from the same planet, much less the same family. But Sarah's who's important. She's very well educated, I know, I paid for it. The fact is that we have to keep those two things in mind to remind ourselves what is so special about this place. We have seen an extraordinary amount of work carried out by the Madison Region Economic Partnership team and its volunteers in only a few months of operation. It did take a bit of time to get going, but they've been working behind the scenes, as you will hear about shortly, to get all these pieces in place to really begin the implementation of Advance Now, building the work groups, getting them around the table, launching the real work of Advance Now. It is not easy. It is, in fact, quite difficult. Regionalism is hard work every day. We have, however, seen lots of places with much more existing capacity than yours stumble on many of these first critical steps in implementation. But you have taken this seriously. It is a startup, but you are well on your way. You are building a sophisticated, professional economic development program that this region has never had. There is a plan for business retention, a plan to pull together the pieces of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, a plan for exports and investment opportunity for products and services here in the region, and a new name, which makes great sense for regional branding. You're going to hear a lot about what's been going on from the chairs of these different work groups in a few minutes. Some of your earlier victories include, in fact, the creation under Paul's leadership of a staff of economic development professionals who wake up every day and do this work for these 8 counties as their life. They are building the programs which are necessary, knowing that many of them were in fact startups. The name of this organization explains where the region is and what it is. It is the Madison Region Economic Partnership. The board of the partnership has been rebuilt to represent not only top investors in Advance Now, but also the interest of the diverse communities and local economies here in the region. It is a strong group. I have had the pleasure of talking and seeing and working with them already. I want to say this too. The private sector across this region has to step up like never before, both in terms of financial support for this program and the human capital necessary to implement it, not just through these work groups, but through all the other things that are happening. It has to be a public-private partnership. That is the only way it can succeed. Around the same table for each of these 5 goal areas at the same time, if you will, carrying out tasks to get to the same outcome. The region has strong public sector institutions. The university system, the public schools, the state, the city and county governments, and growing businesses that have a national and global presence. American Family Insurance, Epic, Sub-Zero, and Wolf. Advance, so many more. Advance Now to Work, the worlds of public service and profit must come together to unite for this region's prosperity. As one of our clients once said, we are better together. The fact is, too, it is about making this place better. That is what community and economic development is all about. It is not about serving the interest of any one group or any one community. It is about the work that you do together that you have never done before, so that we raise the wealth and the quality jobs for the 500,000 workers in this region. There are more now than 25,000 businesses here that can grow and innovate and be successful in the global marketplace with the talent and support they need right here in the region. So we work to increase the opportunity, the education, the quality of life and presence for all of the 250,000 residents here under 18 years old, so that the tens of thousands of new residents that we hope come in this next decade and beyond are welcomed, plugged in, and can join this work to build a more prosperous region. You need to keep thinking about your region in a different way, as one place. As I mentioned before, you are changing, and the world is as well. I have in my career had staffs from 3 to 350. I have always asked those staffs never to say two things to me. The first is, we've always done it that way. And the second is, we tried that once before. Well, maybe we can get it right this time. So the fact is, I hope that as we worked through the creation of Advance Now, we eliminated, and I will tell you, none of the steering committee members and none of this new board have ever uttered those words. And I think that's important. Gary's going to tell you in a few moments about Austin, a place that had to undergo a serious mindset transformation without changing the best parts of their metro area and its individual communities. But it was in a deep hole. It had lost 26,000 jobs paying $80,000 a job. It had no in-migration. It had no home construction. The chamber was broke. They had nobody working every day on anything. As you all know, when we started this process here in Madison, there had never been a holistic regional economic development program. You had never come together to really work on it this way. It may still be difficult for some of you to think about it as a region and what is all in this strategy and what this place will be and can be in 5 years. It's important, too, to know that, as one of my colleagues at MIT said, if you don't measure it, you're just practicing. So we've got to think hard about the benchmarks and measures that are in the strategy and implementation plan and what's there. You've got to keep looking at your competitors and understand best practices and who's doing this well across the country and the world. But keep in mind what makes this place special, what it's all about, what keeps people here, what do they care about, why are the businesses loyal to the region when they could go elsewhere. It is about your workforce. It is about this place. It is about the beauty of the 8 counties. It is about the creativity of your technology companies and your particular love for this vicious little rodent called Bucky Badger. In a minute, I'm going to tell you about somebody that loves cows, longhorn cows. Ladies and gentlemen, Austin has been through quite a lot. Yesterday, another report came out from the On Numbers Index people looking at the 102 strongest markets in this country, over 500,000. The number one community for 5 of the last 6 months was Austin. Job growth up 11% since 2008. No other market over 7%. Low unemployment, 5.3, only 12 of those 100 markets under 5.5. Weekly earnings up 7.6%. The last 12 months, number 9 in the country. Retail strength up 8.2 over the last 5 years. Only Little Rock slightly better among all the 100 communities. Stable home prices, with 92 of the 102 having lowered prices since 2008. Austin actually up 4.7. It has not been an easy way. It has been a growing and serious effort by Austin for all these years. When we first went there in 2003, as I described earlier, it was in a difficult spot. There was one person who said that this had to change, and not only figured out a way through the Real Estate Council to put together the funds to bring us in, but also spent 6 months after we finished the strategy raising the funds for Opportunity Austin 1. And he is Gary Farmer. I have been at this work a long time. He is one of the finest, if not the finest, volunteer I have ever seen in my career. He's the president of the Heritage Title Company of Austin and the Heritage Exchange Corporation of Texas. He's been in the title business since 1985. I can't list all the charitable and civic endeavors that he has been involved in. He's been the chairman of everything there is in Austin, including the University of Texas Chancellor's Council, the Chamber, the Development Corporation, the Real Estate Council, the Trust for Public Land. He has been the chairman of Opportunity Austin 3 times, and as I said, has dedicated countless hours to it over time. The Boy Scouts honored him with a Distinguished Citizen Award in 2009. The Chamber named him the Austinite of the Year in 2006. The Real Estate Council, in fact, renamed its highest award after him. In fact, there are so many things I could tell you about him, but let me get to the important stuff. He's married to Susan. They are both graduates of the University of Texas. They have 3 daughters. 2 of them, one graduating last week, in fact, have now graduated, and the third one, who's a sophomore, should finish in the next 6 or 8 years. But let me tell you the real important thing. One day, Gary called me and he said, "Holladay, I made it." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I made it. I finally made it." And I said, "What?" He said, "I'm the only person in the history of the University of Texas to have 2 daughters as cheerleaders at the same time." Ladies and gentlemen, Gary Farmer.
Mac, thank you very much, and thank you all for having me here. First time to Wisconsin. Got in about midnight last night. Leave at 6 this afternoon. Quick trip, to say the least. But I've already discovered a couple of things just by listening this morning and by interacting with a few people that are in the crowd. The people here are very friendly and generous, and that is an asset of which you should be proud. And also, with Bill's comments and Mac's and the changing of the name, I can tell that there's real sensitivity about this thought of regional cooperation, and maybe some anxiety about putting Madison in the title. My advice to you, if you have your panties in a wad about it, get over it. Slip them off, shake them out, and move on. I was asked to speak at Minneapolis-St. Paul a couple of years ago. It took about 3 hours. I said, "Well, I know the problem." I said, "For the last 150 years, y'all been throwing rocks at each other across the Mississippi River. Quit it. Use your diversity as an asset." You know, as you might surmise by looking at me, I enjoy chicken fried steak, but I don't want it every dadgum meal. I'd like to have a few other options on the menu. That's what we did. That's what we get when we do a regional approach to economic development, because every city in your 8-county region has asset that can be utilized for the benefit of the whole. If we have a victory in Georgetown, Texas, 35, 40 miles to the north of Austin, there's an accretive benefit in San Marcos, Texas, 35 or 40 miles south. There is no accretive benefit if that company goes to Raleigh-Durham or Nashville or Phoenix. Embrace regionalism every day and every way. I've tried to describe it in the Austin region. as a great intramural contest. Each community should put their best foot forward and try to the greatest extent possible to win the assignment. But if they don't win the assignment, fall in behind the cities in the region that are still in competition and be supportive of that and help that and understand that maybe you don't get the absolute prize, but you will get benefits from your neighbor being successful. It's really important to do. We recognize that in Austin. We have, I think, some of the same dynamic that you all have here in the Madison region. Austin being a very liberal, democratic, college-oriented state capital complex, and all of the surrounding area being much more conservative. We recognize that and we embrace it. I'll give you an example. In Austin, Texas, we are famous for a little bumper sticker. Perhaps you've seen it. Keep Austin weird. And how apropos would that be? Round Rock, who votes about 80% conservative, 80% Republican, to the north decided they better have their own bumper sticker. And in a tilt of the hat to Austin, their bumper sticker says, keep Round Rock mildly unusual. Pflugerville, between Round Rock and Austin, to the east, decided they would get in on the whole bumper sticker deal, and they said Pflugerville, between a rock and a weird place. So I was asked to talk today by Mac and Paul and others about Austin and about what we've done and my experience of being engaged there from the beginning of this particular Opportunity Austin Odyssey that we've been on. I'm happy to do that. I want you to know that I am but one of many who have dedicated much time, treasure, and talent to the success of the program. And it will take many of you here to devote time, talent, and treasure if you want to be successful, really successful. If you want to go through the motions, let somebody else do it. Not my job, not really interested, rather do something else. Recipe for failure, get involved. Everyone in this room that can hear my voice, get involved. Recruit your neighbors, recruit your business associates. Put your employees in, make a difference. Be proud of the collective result. So I'm but one of many. I don't like to talk about my role necessarily, but I'll do it because I was asked to do it. Back home, of course, people that know me, when I get up and talk about it, I say typically when you hear me talk, you can barely see Mike Rollins' lips moving. Mike is our chamber exec, and a fine one at that, and he has done yeoman's work in this arena. So, as Mac alluded, in the late 90s, early 2000s, Austin was really adrift. In the early 2000s, as Mac said, we lost 26,000 jobs, not any old jobs, our very best jobs. We also lost about 12 or 13,000 other jobs. We had nearly 40,000 jobs lost in a 2.5-year period. Our per capita income was declining. Our average family income was declining. City of Austin tax revenue collections were declining. They were actually cutting people at the city. Now, who's ever heard of that? You know, not just by attrition. They were actually cutting people, cutting services. We didn't have a plan at all. The truth of the matter is we didn't have a clue what to do. But we knew something had to be done. The chamber had lost over 60% of its membership. It was about 1.3 million or 4 million in the hole. It was technically and practically bankrupt. And fortunately, a couple of guys stepped forward, Charles Barnett at the Seton Healthcare System, Rick Burciaga at Wells Fargo Bank, and they said, we're going to change this. We should have a vibrant chamber. We should have good programs, and we should be able to see good progress. And so they made an extraordinary commitment. And they came and they asked me if I would help if they would fix the organization structurally, would I help with the economic development piece? And I said I would. I would, as long as we could agree on a few basic principles, prerequisites for my involvement, because I knew they would be prerequisites for the business community's involvement. Number one, a real plan. A real plan with goals and objectives and metrics, not jargon and buzzword designed to separate people from their resource so that there could be a chamber. We wanted a real plan, real goals, real objectives. Intermarket Street Services, best thing we did. Mac and his team are pros. They're very good. They know what they're doing. You all have done that piece. You have to follow it. As I've heard Mac say, this is not a multiple choice opportunity. You got to get it all right, and you do. So a real plan that was regional in scope. We had talked about collaboration, cooperation. We'd kind of made a few, little tilts of the hat. We said really regional, fully engaged, all 5 of our counties, all of our communities involved. That was very important, and I'll come back to that. Absolutely accountable. This is an investment that businesses are making, and, by the way, public sector entities were going to make. It took a while to get some of them in, but ultimately today we have every city in the 5-county region participates in funding this plan because they know it is truly regional. Absolute accountability, totally transparent. 2 critically important areas. It's your money. They should be accountable. The new regional partnership should be accountable. They should be transparent. When we started, we got the plan, we costed it out, we found out what the budget was, we printed a line item 5-year budget, and we shared it with everybody. We wanted them to know what we were going to do if we could raise the money. We wanted them what we did when we spent the money. We wanted them to know what we accomplished along the way. And, by the way, take credit for not only the victories, but take responsibility for the failures, because everything isn't perfect. You've got to take the good with the bad, no doubt about it. We had to have, at that point in time, a separate fiduciary board because we had to have time for the chamber's reputation to be rehabilitated. So we recruited the very best board we possibly could from a regional perspective to get the most respected people on the board so that others would have the confidence to make an investment knowing that it would be handled and handled well. And finally, I said no professional fundraisers. I had run a campaign for the chamber back in '95. That was the beginning to know that it was kind of a bait and switch deal after the fact, and we used professional fundraisers. I said, if we can't do this belly to belly, friend to friend, then we shouldn't be engaged in it at all. And so we put together a blue ribbon task force of volunteers who went out and raised the money. Mac did his work, Market Street did their work, and we costed it out, and the 5-year implementation cost was $11 million. The most money the chamber had ever raised was in '95. They raised $4 million for a 4-year campaign. When we laid that out to the public, that's the first time I really knew what Ross Perot meant when he talked about the giant sucking sound, because that's pretty much, there was a community gasp. No one thought we could be successful. But in fact, we were successful. We oversubscribed. We had 250 investors that put forward $14.3 million for us to implement the program over a 5-year period. So why did they do it? They did it because we had a real plan, we were transparent, we were accountable, we were regional in scope. We followed the principles that we laid out before we started, and the community looked at the plan and they validated the plan with their pocketbook. So then the onus is back on the chamber, Opportunity Austin, to make sure that we produced. And in fact, we did. We did produce. The 5 years before we started Opportunity Austin, we had 6.5% job growth cumulative in the region, and we ranked 24th in the country. Today, on a look-back basis to January 1, 2004, Austin, Texas is the most prolific creator of jobs in America today. We've had 26.5% cumulative job growth. That's 174,800 jobs. We've raised the per capita wage. We've raised the annual average family household income. We've recruited 256 companies in 9 years. We did that by making almost 2,000 visits outside the state of Texas. We don't recruit in Texas. We don't recruit Houston or Dallas or San Antonio. They're neighbors. They know us. They want to come. We'd love to have them. But we're not going to go recruit them. Doesn't make sense to us. So we're outside the state of Texas, predominantly in the domestic market. But we've been to Japan. We've been to Europe. We've been to Mexico. We've been to Korea. We've had great success on the international stage. So when it was all said and done, we were quite pleased. But as Mac said, the work is not done. I mean, you've got to continue each and every day, or else you'll have, these wild swings in your economic performance. We had to diversify. That was one of our great goals, was to diversify our cluster base. And we've been successful at that. We had big initiatives in transportation, big initiatives in a med school. We've accomplished those things. We've got more challenges. The bottom line is the plan that Mac wrote for Austin, Texas, is probably not that dissimilar from the plan he's written for Madison. Structurally, not that different. But what Mac can do, what he has done for us, is he has shown us what our assets are and shown us how to amplify the assets to maximize the potential, while at the same time he's shown us our liabilities and helped us to understand how to mitigate those liabilities. So you have to do them in tandem as well. It's been a really fun thing to be involved with. So it's May of 2008. We have a few more months in our 5-year strategy. We've already had Market Street back in. They've done Opportunity Austin 2.0 strategy. Costed that one out $21 million. We started raising the funds in May of 08. Not the best time. I don't know how it was in Madison, but it was a little rocky down in Austin, Texas. But we had some very interesting things happen. We failed, by the way. We did not succeed. We didn't raise $21 million. We raised $19.3 million of investment. We lost 100 of our 250 original investors. Not one, to my knowledge, said we're dissatisfied. We didn't get the benefit of the bargain. They said, I just laid off 25 people, including my sister-in-law. I'm trying to talk my way back into the house. I mean, they had other issues going on. But while we lost 100, we picked up 200. 200 new investors, first-time investors, because they saw the value of the program. They saw the results. 124,000 new jobs, $7.9 billion of new wage, 145 companies in the 5-year period. They saw the value. They understood for the first time what they probably didn't understand in 2004. This isn't a referral program. It's not a leads club. It is a comprehensive, aggressive economic development program designed to create a better environment, a better economic and business environment. Our motto, our tagline, which kind of came up on the fly, jobs for families, return for taxpayers, accountability for corporations. Those are kind of the 3 principles that we look at as we go and recruit different companies. Mac helped us understand that we had to pay very close attention to our existing industries, that we had to make sure that we were paying as much attention to them, and our budget reflects that we do that. And we also understand that as a result of doing that, it's a whole lot cheaper to keep them and grow them than find them and bring them because of the disparity in the budgets, and I'll come back to that too. So at any rate, we ended up with 350 investors. We raised the $19.3 million. We have been executing on that plan. We're continuing to execute on that plan through the end of this year. So we're in our 10th year, or the 5th year of our second 5-year iteration, or however you want to look at it. The money runs out at the end of this year. So we've had Market Street do yet a third strategy. They took the same thoughtful, comprehensive approach. We included more people. We have new goals and objectives. We have new metrics. We're looking at some things we've not looked at before. We're trying to figure out how we reduce the congestion index, because we do have a transportation issue. We're trying to lower the poverty rate. We're trying to lower the child poverty rate. We're looking at those things that would have social equity components associated with them. Critically important that we do that, while at the same time trying to focus on the bigger economy, on the place, and on our talent. Those are the things, those are the big buckets that we work on. Our goal is, this time around, to raise $25 million. I like where we are momentarily. We are about 12 weeks into the funding campaign. As of last Friday, sorry, I've been in, hope there's not a lot of Baptists up here. I've been in Las Vegas for the last 4 days. I was working, promise. But last Friday, I can tell you that we had 102 yeses against only 7 no's. I like the optics of that. The returning investors are up by about 15% across the board. That's more impressive than it sounds, because anybody that has given at the $100,000 level or greater, we didn't want them to increase. We didn't ask them to increase. We said, just whole serve. If they were at 100 or 200 or 300, wherever they were across the 5-year, just whole serve. We're going to go and ask some of the smaller companies to step up, and we're going to cast the net much wider in hopes that we can bring more people into the program, more investors into the program. It's a very powerful thing when you go and sit down in front of an elected official and say, I'm here to represent 350 different investors in this program. I think it would be yet more powerful if we could say we're here representing 500 corporate investors. So we're going to grow the campaign that way. I feel really confident that we will raise our $25 million based on what we've seen thus far. 18 first-time investors, 43 out of the 102 are at the $100,000 level or greater. Our largest investor is the City of Austin at $250,000 per year. Our largest private investor is at $100,000 a year. We have a handful at $250,000, $50 a year. Again, I think we were at, in the last campaign, 73 at $100,000 or greater. That's real resource. That's a significant commitment for any company. And so I think that speaks to the efficacy of the program, that these various investors see the result. So I was asked to speak about 30 minutes or so. I think I've been going about 20 max, so I'm going to try to give a couple of lessons learned and along the way, and maybe an anecdote or two, and then we'll do Q&A, Mac, if that's all right. So the first lesson learned is you got to be committed to the plan. You have a great plan. I'm confident of that. I say that without the benefit of having read it, but I know who wrote it, so I'm relatively confident it is a solid plan. You need to be committed to it. You need to embrace it. You need to fund it. You need to work it. Every day that strategy is on your books, you need to go forward with it. You have got to earn, and I already addressed this, but I think it's important. You must earn the respect of the regional partners. We had to do that. I told Zach earlier, I told him an anecdote. The very first call, I said, all right, it's 2004. I said, we're going to do a regional plan. By God, we're going to be regional all up and down the board. We're going to make our first call in Georgetown, Texas, and ask them to be the first contributor to the plan. So Tim Crowley and I drive the 35 miles up to Georgetown to meet with Mayor Gary Nealon and the head of the Georgetown Chamber, Mel Penland. Baby, we are knotted up, shined up, ready to go. We deliver a remarkable presentation, to which Mel Penland leaned over, looked over his half-rimmed glasses and said, if you goofballs from Austin think for 1 second we're going to give you any of Georgetown's money, you are just crazy. Just see you bye. So we tucked our tail and skulked all the way back down to Austin. Said, well, that went relatively well. But you know, Providence sometimes can be a wonderful thing. One of our very first significant prospects, predicated on the strategy that Market Street wrote, was a Korean company, a Japanese company called Tassis, the plastic injection molding company. Tier 1 supplier to Toyota in San Antonio, a mere 80 miles away. Tassis came in. They looked at the region. Again, we're agnostic. If a company comes in and says we need 50,000 feet of lease space or we need 25 acres of greenfield, we survey the whole region and we find every possible real estate option that will fit their needs, completely agnostic as to location. And guess what? They picked a site in Georgetown, Texas, a site in Pflugerville, Texas, and the game was on. You know, everybody sharpened their pencil, everybody wanted to win the deal. Georgetown got the nod. I saw old Mel Penland 2 weeks later from across the room. He goes, Gary, we're with you, we're for you. Guess what? They've been an investor ever since. But we had to earn that. It was, quite candidly, it was a little arrogant of Tim and I to march up there and think that we were just going to waltz in and, you know, get the pretty girl and get out of town. We had to earn it. I rather suspect the same thing is true here. So those in Madison need to do outreach. When the way we started earning it, not just with one project. If we have an event going on in Austin, we invite all of our regional partners to participate. If we travel, when we travel, and we travel about 25 times a year, we invite the regional partners to go with us. When we have a prospect, we are agnostic. We want them to have as many options on the menu as is possible so that we get it and it's accretive to the region. I just cannot stress to you enough about the importance. And to the extent, and I'm going to be personal, to the extent that anybody in the outlying region is being petty and mean-spirited, tell them to stop it. Cut it out and get on the bus. And let's make Madison as a region great. Lessons learned. Amplify your assets, mitigate your liabilities. No question about that. It's everybody's responsibility to fund this program. Just out of curiosity. Not trying to be ugly or meddlesome. I might like to come back someday. By a show of hands, how many investors are in this room? By a show of hands. That looks like about 25, 30%. What's going on with the rest of you? Anybody want to hazard a guess? What's going on with all of those of you who did not raise your hand? You either don't trust the program, you're not sure that it's going to be successful, you think it's somebody else's job. Well, it's not. It's your job. You need to get with the plan. Not everybody has to give $100,000. You give what is comfortable. Maybe a little sacrificial giving wouldn't hurt. But you got to participate. Many hands make light work. I learned that a very long time ago from a smart guy that I respected a great deal. Mark White, who was governor of Texas from 82 to 86. One of his favorite sayings, many hands make light work. He also had another saying which was designed for those who didn't get it, and it was, don't let the son of a bitch cross shallow. Don't cross shallow. Be part and parcel of the success of this region. And while you're doing it, have fun. There is no reason this has to seem like work. It can seem like great fun. And if you will participate, I'll promise you something. You will make a new friend or more. You will pick up a new client or more. You will be in the know. People will be after you for what you know. It can be great fun. Some of the very best relationships I have on both the friendship and the business level were created through this work. and if not this work, other charitable work. This is not charity, by the way. Your money put in should be an investment upon which you expect a return. It's not civic, charitable, philanthropic. It is a business investment. And if you'll do it and you'll work it, you will get a return. Some other important things will happen. Your business, and I don't know, I apologize that I haven't had the time to do the spade work to know your business community in this region. But I think that what will happen is exactly what happened in Austin. The business community got re-energized, and the business community is tackling other problems that have been long in need of help. The business community is much more politically active. We're much more able to look at our elected officials and tell them exactly what the business community thinks and cause them to understand the program. We have a huge no-growth contingent in Austin. Truth of the matter is, it's not bad that they're there. It creates a good, healthy tension, and so your argument better be merit-based when you go to the elected officials. And I don't think that's a bad thing. We should be doing things on merit. Include your young people. Yeah, include your young people. There's I told a little anecdote. I'll clean it up a little bit. I went to a banker back in 1995, and I was a young guy and trying to get something done for the chamber, different program, and I hadn't even gotten much into the warm up, much less the pitch, and he goes, "No, Gary, we're not going to do that." I said, "Well, man, you ain't even heard what I want you to do." "Nope, we're not going to do it." I said, "Well, Mr. Elliott, I'm kind of a young guy. I'd like to understand why you're not going to do it." He said, "Well, I'll tell you the truth. I'm a little past my give a hoot cycle. Same number of letters, didn't sound the same." Well, you know what? We get more mature. We get different things on our plate. Include your young people. They want to work. They want to earn a seat at your table. They want the respect that this group can give them. Don't shut them out. Incorporate them. I think it would be a very wise thing to do. Last thing I would tell you, raise the bar. Raise the bar for everybody. Set goals that you don't think are achievable and then achieve them. You'll be glad you did. Mac, that's what I got to say today. Thank you all very much.
Gary, let me ask you this. And as you pointed out, it has been fascinating for me to watch the friendships that have been built across Opportunity Austin that have been kind of amazing. When you all started the program, when we started the first strategy work, there was one staff member at the chamber who had anything to do with economic development. Now there are 14. Tell me about the importance of professional staff.
Well, you really can't underestimate the importance of professional staff. As Max said, we had one person, she was the only one who could spell economic development, much less knew anything about it. And she served us very well for a very long time. This is everyday, all-day work. It's not 8 to 5 work. It's early in the morning to late at night. And if you don't have a professional staff, you can't hope to put out the materials that you want to put out. You can't hope to host the prospects you want to host. You just cannot really execute the program. The vast majority of the money that we will raise and spend is on staff. That's our biggest cost. I failed to mention earlier, I said I would and then I forgot about it, but our budget, our $25 million budget, 48% of that will be used for what I call the basic blocking and tackling of economic development. That's recruitment, attraction. That, if I remember correctly, is about 36 or 7%, and then 11 or 12% is for retention expansion. Again, the primary cost in that is for good professional staff, but it also includes the travel, the collateral materials, hosting prospects, et cetera, et cetera. We also, which I think is very important, we spend or will spend about 32% of our money on primary and secondary education programs. If we don't keep kids in school, if we don't move them towards graduation, being college or career ready, then we are missing the boat. People are going to come, corporations are going to come to Madison, not for the lakes and the birds and the, what'd you say, a badger or whatever? No more than they're coming to Austin for the lakes and the trails and to keep it weird. They're coming for talent. They're coming for young, educated talent. And if you don't pay special attention to your public and private school systems and keep these kids in school, move them to and through graduation, and get them to matriculate to some post-secondary education, you will not be successful. So we spend about 32% of our money on those types of primary, secondary programs. 13% on transportation advocacy. That is a big area for us. It speaks to quality of place. It also speaks to health and human safety. Companies like to do what? They like to transport their employees and their goods and their services safely, efficiently. So another big bucket area. Professional staff does all of that work every day, and they call on volunteers like me to come in at the appropriate time, whether it's to work with city, county, or state government, whether it's to go on a recruiting call. One of the most amazing things is when we were in San Francisco just 2 weeks ago, 12 volunteers, 3 professional staff. And it's always amazing to see the reaction of the prospect when they find out I'm a volunteer. They go, what are you doing here? We see professional people all the time. So what are you doing here? Well, I'm here because I love Austin, Texas, and I want you to know what I know. And I want to give it to you as a business person and not as someone paid to do it. I'm here on my own nickel, and I want you to know. It's all about education. So, long answer, Mac, you cannot underestimate the benefit of professional staff, but you take that and you couple it appropriately with volunteer help, and it is a powerful recipe.
You mentioned earlier that when we first started and even began to mention regionalism, I'm not certain there's a place in the world where independence is more fierce than it is in Texas. And I remember that people looked, as you mentioned when you made your first trip up to Georgetown. But beyond that, beyond the fact that you were very fortunate to have some things that produced some quick wins, what do you think the most critical element, is related to the creation of regional trust and the long-term relationships that are necessary for the different governmental units who compete like hell with each other for everything to cross over and really get to the point where, hey, we really are one place?
I would suggest that respect is the most important thing. We're all different. Round Rock and Georgetown sitting side by side are actually very unique and different. San Marcos to the south. Everybody has something to bring to the dance. You've got to respect that. If you disdain that, they're going to know it and know it pretty quickly, no matter what other comfort words you want to use. If you really don't respect their position, their core values, they're going to pick up on that. Respect begets respect. Disdain begets disdain. And then take that, as I said earlier, take your differences and cause it to be a strength as a collective. Instead of chunking rocks at one another, being in a clod fight or a rock fight with each other, add value. Exactly. Bring those disparate assets together to create a superset of assets, and then exploit them to your benefit. So I think respect.
It's interesting. He didn't tell you quite the whole story about the green movement in Austin. In fact, when we first went there, the leader of the effort was a young woman named Robin Rather. Her father had a long career with CBS. So what Gary decided was that Robin couldn't be on the steering committee, but Mac was expendable. So Mac had to go have lunch with Robin rather, which subsequently led into a couple of other meetings. And I only tell you that story to say that because we included her and because we showed her the evidence of the competitive assessment, where the community was, what the reality was, when the strategy was rolled out, she made a lot of positive public statements about it and about the fact that Opportunity Austin is what Austin needed to do. So the inclusion and the fact that, as we've done here, the point I want you to speak to, Gary, is how important is it to listen to everybody? And how important is it to be sure that at the very least you've treated everybody with respect in terms of what they think and what's there? And interestingly, the first slogan, if you will, that came out of the program was, the tagline for it was Austin, the human capital. And it had several meetings. Talk a bit about how everybody bought into that.
Well, we spent a long time trying to come up with Austin, the human capital. Obviously, we're the capital of Texas. We have great talent. We have the ability to attract talent. And so different people used the slogan in different ways, but it resonated with all of them. Again, we wanted to show that we were inclusive as possible. We went through an exercise at the city. There was a mayoral task force, and it was so very Austin. I mean, there was every sort of character in this big tent committee. We divided ourselves into three subcommittees, one being traditional business / incentives, one being small business, and one being economic vitality, which really was the Keep Austin Weird committee. And so everybody from the different constituencies had their say. And then it got rolled up into a bigger policy issue that the city adopted. That policy, as adopted by the city, was heavily influenced by the work that Market Street had done. That was our committee, my subcommittee, if you will. But everybody else, small businesses who couldn't relate to Samsung and AMD and Dell and Applied Materials and so on and so forth, they still had their representatives at the table. And then the artisans and craftsmen and musicians and no-growth people and environmental people, and there is a difference between no-growthers and environmentalists. Everybody got to play there, and that's another validation process for the work that Market Street had done for us. And so the city adopted, really for the first time, an economic development policy. I want to make sure you understand, out of 256 relocations or expansions, we've used incentives only 13 times. So there's not we're not buying our way to the table. That's a very, I think, judicious use of public investment. But to answer the question, you have to go through a process. You have to show respect. You have to let everybody have their day in the sun, have their 30 minutes at the mic, and then they'll be more accepting and they'll buy in, and that's what's happened in Austin.
You know, it's interesting. I was talking to Dave Porter, who is the head of the Economic Development Division at the Chamber down there a couple of weeks ago, and as we've come out of the Great Recession, and as you've heard, Austin has been very seriously successful in holding its own and moving forward on the positive job numbers. And I'd asked Dave to ask the staff to do a little research. And in these last 18 months of all the net job creation in Austin, 63% of it came from existing companies, you know, of all sizes. Some of the new announcements like Apple's was huge, but at other times it's 10 and 12 and 14 and 16. So we got to remember there's three legs to the stool. Small business and entrepreneurship, existing business and recruitment, and they're all vitally important. 10 years in now to Austin's work. The fact is that they've been very successful. How difficult is it for you now to convince people that the consistency and continuity is vital, and that you could fall off the cliff again.
Because of the history of our place, it's not that difficult. I think people finally get it. And, we had some great success in Austin in the early 80s. Governor White helped recruit MCC and Cimatech, which were national searches that resulted in Austin victories, really kind of put us on the map. But then we quit. And people remember that we quit, and we got pounded for it. And then we kind of rejuvenated in the very late 80s, early 90s with the Advantage Austin program, and we worked real hard, and we had success, and then we quit, and we got pounded for it. And, I talk kind of slow, but it didn't take me that long to figure out,
Shouldn't quit.
And that's the rest of us too, by the way. We shouldn't have quit. So I think people understand that complacency is our absolute worst enemy. We've got to keep doing this work. Look, companies change, economies change, technologies change. And if you're not there embracing a strategy to grow what you have, to look at the next great thing. I mean, Dell Computer. Everybody knows when we did in 2004, we surveyed 260-something site consultants and corporate CEOs. And their perception of Austin could not have been more wrong. Now, they knew we were a state capital. They knew we had the University of Texas, and they knew we had Dell Computer. Beyond that, they thought we were an oil and gas town. We don't have oil and gas. That's just a stereotypical Texas deal. But we don't have that in Austin. Dell Computer started, as you know, the story in the dorm room by Michael, grows it up. At one point in time, they were the largest private employer in Austin with 24,000 people in Austin. Today, they have 12,000 people. They're still the largest private employer, but not by much and not for long. Well, if we had just rested on our laurels to say, well, let's rename this place Dellville, we'd been in a world of hurt. So you've got to continue on every day. Complacency is the worst possible enemy that you have. It truly is. And let me just say before I forget it, Madison doesn't need to be Austin. Madison can't be Austin. Madison could be better than Austin. Madison needs to take what Madison has and use it to the best of Madison's ability. When we first rolled out Opportunity Austin, it was September the 18th or 19th, Mac, of 2003 when we had the first big meeting. I made a quote, I made a statement which ended up in the paper, and the quote was, "Austin does not have a monopoly on the cool and groovy." I mean, there are a lot of great places in this country. I suspect Madison is one of them. Nashville, Raleigh-Durham, Phoenix, Portland, Denver, California cities. I mean, there's a lot of great places in this country. The differentiating factor is effort. And those who put forward a great effort will get great result, and those who sit on their royal dusties will get royal dust, I guess. I don't know what they'll get.
One of the great joys in my work and in this work is making friends, like Gary Farmer. Let's thank him for coming to Madison.